2022 looking back. I think this is a special year for us as a family. Great-grandpa bought some property 100 years ago. And, you know, one way or another, we've made it to the point we are today. We faced a lot of adversity over the years. We had to do a lot of changes, a lot of adapting, a lot of scrambling. A lot of businesses fail going from generation to generation, and I just think we're really thankful we've had the stick-to-itiveness to really get through and persevere.
It took us a little while to get that down.
25 years of counseling.
You know, the problem is that, unfortunately, I never sat down with my dad and said, you know, what did you do when you were growing up in the Netherlands? My grandfather had 12 children. My dad was the oldest. They had a tulip farm in the Netherlands, but they're gonna run out of money, so I believe they sold the property and decided to move to America.
Followed a Dutch priest to Wilhelmina, Missouri.
It's all rocky. There's no farming there. And when they got there and they tried and they couldn't grow weeds, my dad heard about Holland, Michigan. He came up here, I guess, and started in business. My dad was on the first tulip time committees. They bought the first tulips from us.
And I remember my grandpa counting in Dutch. He's counting the bulbs on the table. Unfortunately, he didn't believe we should be speaking Dutch here. Once he moved to America, it's all English.
We're American now.
But it took us 3 weeks to dig the tulips with 40 guys, and 3 weeks to peel them with about the same amount of people. It was a big operation. Compare that now to we dig the tulips out of the ground, put them in crates, and give them away.
That would make Grandpa shudder. Giving tulips away for free, that's blasphemy.
This whole year was the 5 days of tulip time. I can't imagine the pressure and the stress. Because one day it rains.
Yeah.
It's not a good tulip time.
Yeah.
No one came.
I love the pictures that we have where it shows the cars coming up Lakewood Boulevard, kind of stopped and waiting because there was so much traffic. This is in the 30s and the 40s. Coming out Lakewood Boulevard to see the tulip farm. I mean, that was really the motivation for Grandpa buying that property out by that new highway they put in the 50s, 52. They bought the property because he could see that all those people are sitting on the road, not spending money. And of course, Dad and Uncle Fred were in the military in the early 50s.
So then it sat for 6 years.
Yeah. And the tulips just didn't like it. The soil was dry and sandy.
A lot of clay out there.
And it's hard to work with. But they found out pretty quickly that you put up a Dutch-looking building along the side of the highway, the windmill on the top of it, people will turn off the highway and say, hey, what's that?
Back in the early days when we had tulip time, different people would come in and sell souvenirs at the tulip farm. So when Fred came, he says, well, Dad, he says, why have all these other people make money off you and when we could sell these souvenirs ourselves?
Harry's expression was, the village is good to us, we need to be good to the village. I had an aunt and uncle that lived in Holland, and I came down and spent a weekend with them. And my cousin fixed me up with a frater from Hope College, and we went to a party, and he crashed it.
And we met there, and we talked for a couple hours, and I got her telephone number.
That was the beginning.
How long now?
65 years. It was a struggle to begin with. And we weren't making a ton of money. And we had to buy out Harry's grandfather's preferred stock. I was fine with the fact that he was building something. You know, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
We didn't know what there was.
We had very few people in the beginning, you know, 2, 3 cars would come in, and that for the whole day. I mean, we were out in the boondocks. So I told my wife, I says, honey, I gotta have the cars so that they can see a car out in front. They know we're open. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to the junkyard and I'm gonna bring 2 cars and I'm gonna park them there in the parking lot. So I went in the junkyard and bought 2 junk cars, had them sit there. And it did help business. Business started going up.
You used to have to cut the weeds down around them so they
Had to cut the weeds underneath.
So it looked like they hadn't been there a while.
They did kind of have a vision of it being a Dutch village. And we've got a drawing from, you know, the very early years where they kind of sketched out, you know, what they saw there and everything. That drawing that Louis Mulder did for you, I mean, there's a number of things that you actually built right in place.
I think the wooden shoe slide too.
Yeah, he designed the wooden shoe slide. He was really quite creative. We put in our first canal. He made the stork. He made all kinds of things. He went to work for Disney. They offered him a good job, so he went to California. Also at that time, we were thinking about an Amsterdam street organ. And my brother Fred and I went to the Netherlands and we picked out the Golden Angel. So on the plane back to the United States, Fred said, I'll go back to the Netherlands and buy it, and negotiate and get it transported down. And it's gonna be your responsibility to get it from New York City to Holland, Michigan. So I said, okay. So Harry and I get in the station wagon, which had a hitch on it, and we head to New York. We pulled that back, and
Through Canada.
yeah, and the way it was set up, it had a hitch that had a spring on it, and every time we hit a bump, that spring would condense and it'd jerk the car. Remember that? And it was a jerky ride all the way back to Holland. It took us 2 days, I think, to drive it back.
Yeah, and they stopped us at the border. I said, what the heck is that thing?
Yeah. I said, it's a street organ. He said, boy, if that's a street organ, how big is the monkey?
I vividly remember when I was 16, that's the year my dad bought out my uncle. Remember that year?
73, wasn't it?
74. It was a gas rationing year. My dad had to make $500,000 to pay off the loan by the fall. And that was a tough year, but we managed to get through it.
Fred and I, we always worked good together. I like to do the grunt work and he liked to do the office work. We had been talking somewhat and he was saying, you know, Harry, he said, you know, we got 7 boys between the 2 of us. You know, I think one of us has to get out and one of us ought to stay in because we can't keep all 7 boys in the business. Well, then he had that heart attack and he just figured that was a good time to get out. It was kind of a sad thing for him to leave because I didn't have I couldn't bounce ideas off of him, or he could. Of course, he wasn't there to bounce ideas off me.
You would close up the shop to head home, and someone would drive in the driveway, someone from out of town, and they wanted a pair of wooden shoes. It was 10 after 5, Mom was waiting for him, all the kids were waiting, and Dad would be like, oh, I'll just help you here just a minute. So he goes back in, turns on all the lights, helps them with their wooden shoes.
There were no cell phones back then.
And sent them on
messages.
their way because he wouldn't turn away anyone.
Yeah, well, it was called the Nelis Minute. I'll be home in a minute. And that turned out to be 15 minutes, half hour, an hour.
The only sport we were allowed to be in was swimming because it was in the middle of the winter and done by spring.
Yeah, no spring
So we were all
sports.
swimmers.
No spring sports.
I played tennis.
Oh, well, you were the spoiled.
And the Saturday of tulip time, her coach came to the village and he said to Harry, who was working the gate, I need Julie. And Harry said,
Sorry, she's working.
We used to get our Aunt Margie, who was our secretary, who wasn't really our aunt, but she worked for the family so long that she actually diapered my dad back in the day. But Margie would give everybody these little slips of paper, and it said, please excuse blank for 5 days of the festival from school. And we'd fill in our name and we'd turn that in, and we had the whole week of school off.
We learned hard work right away. I mean, we all started pretty young, and you started out at the bottom.
It's in your blood.
It was the
just knew
funnest
it.
place to be. I mean, we didn't have vacation.
I don't know about cleaning the canal if that was all right.
And you know, it's kind of leading by example, right? If people really respond to that when they know, you know, you're willing to jump in and clean bathrooms and do dishes and
Yeah.
Clean grease traps.
We all did.
We'd recruit all of our girlfriends to come and Dutch dance. So we worked with all of our friends all summer.
Well, and I mean, I grew up with the ladies there. I mean, we had a lot of retired, maybe 50 and older clerks there. I mean, I was little and I would go stand by their side and I'd bag for them, and then I was a Dutch dancer for them, and then I was a manager there when they were all still there. I mean, they are our extended family. I mean, some of those ladies worked there for 30 plus years.
They were either aunts or grandmas to us growing up, and then we were literally their boss. You know, you just, all of a sudden one day they come back from the winter and you're like, yeah, Susie's in charge of the restaurant now.
I didn't go to college, and that's the biggest mistake I made in my life. So I was determined that all 5 of our kids were going to go through college, and they did.
you know, I don't think there was any overt written contract, like you must go to college and learn something that you can bring back, but we all kind of did.
Julie, when she graduated, she says, I wanna work at the village too, and I said, well, you know, we really don't have room for you. He said, you're gonna take Carol into the business too. You can't have the other 4 without her, so.
You know, that certainly was that 80s and 90s period where we had to make enough space for all 5 kids in the business. You know, we're all different. There's 5 different personalities, 5 different skill sets, 5 different energy levels, 5 different perspectives on life. I always kind of say, well, business presents their challenges. Everybody knows being in a family presents your challenges. You overlay those, and it just gives you this complex grid of navigating these issues.
You look back on those times now, and we were together every day. We had lunch together. We worked together. We fought a little bit. We laughed a lot. But I cherish the memories of working with the family. Some of us considered that a blessing, and some of us a curse.
88 was our peak year. Everything started going south
After that.
after that.
In the early 90s, the casinos started opening up and we lost all our bus traffic. We used to get 100 buses a day during tulip time. And now I don't know if we get 100 a year. We were cutting back to the point where we couldn't cut anymore. It was really tough going into 2000.
2007 was when we started saying, hey, we got to go after this new market. And Julie was the marketing manager before that. And I was like, Julie, we got to change the name, we got to change the logo, we can change the advertising, we got to change everything.
Because I was in charge of advertising.
She looked at me and she goes, I'll let you. I got 4 kids under 6 to raise. I'm too busy for that.
How can this business go from one family and supporting that one family to supporting 6? Because it still had to support mom and dad, and then the 5 kids. We were all working there, and I guess when people ask, we just say we were top heavy. So I think Julie peeled off, and then Steve took the car wash, and then I peeled off. And so, you know, it's sustainable because we just kind of had to make the hard choice to keep it going versus stay there.
So we went through a transition in 2009. We went to an auction in Chicago. The things we added from that auction kind of changed our clientele.
The first thing we looked at was the Ferris wheel. I was looking up at it going, wow, that's really high. And I was thinking about our maintenance department going, do we have good enough people not to strand people up there? And I was like, nah, I'm gonna keep my arm down. I didn't raise it to bid.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
And the guy right next to me put up his arm. He did the first bid. Nobody else bid. And so when the auction was done and the auctioneer said sold, I turned to the guy and go like, wow, you bought a Ferris wheel, huh? He's like, yep. I'm like, what are you gonna do with it? And he goes, I'm gonna put it up in my backyard and let my kids play on it. My jaw hit the floor. I was like, I run a small theme park. I don't even dare buy that thing. But the funny thing was, after we walked away from there, then I thought, I'm gonna find something nice and flat on the ground. And we got the pedal pumper cars from there.
He put in a zip line and he put in a duck race and a...
You weren't too happy about that zip line.
I thought, this is a Dutch, you know? Why do you put in a zip line? Well, you named it a Dutch word.
Kabelbahn.
And so I'm walking around out in the park and I look and I said, boy, these kids are having a good time out here. So I said, Joe, we got to get that Ferris wheel.
And so then, I mean, it's 2013, we're only 1 year removed from thinking we might go out of business. And this was a huge investment. And I said, you know what? This is your idea. I don't want my brothers and sisters pinning this one on me. So we're going to name this after you. This is Harry's Windmill Ride.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
We put it right on the highway so it wouldn't be missed. One of my jobs is to close the bell tower at an hour before the park closes. So every time I'm in there, there's people leaving. But quite often there's kids crying as they're leaving. And it's not because they fell, it's because they don't want to leave. So that's a good feeling.
I was going to say the same thing. Kids saying, I don't want to go. And the mom saying, it's okay, honey, we'll come back. And I go, yes. Our job is done here.
So our best years were 17, 18, and 19. Best years ever. So we're going in the right direction.
2020 was brutal, absolutely brutal. I mean, we've had bad tulip times before, but we've never had no tulip time before. And
That was a
holy
strange
cow.
feeling. That
Saturday at tulip time, we made $43.95. We sold one pair of wooden shoes to somebody who picked them up curbside. 2021
was good too.
Was a big bounce back from COVID. And people are coming to us to just have a nice day and a nice visit and a good time, so it's a great atmosphere. It doesn't feel like work at all. Become more of a family fun. We took everything that we did historically and we added something fun and interactive to it. We do the Dutch dancing immediately afterwards. Now we have Dutch dancing lessons. You know, wooden shoe carving demonstration immediately afterwards. Try on wooden shoes. You know, it's just a delight for the senses. You get to taste fudge. We got 25 different kinds of Dutch cheese you can taste. Make your own stroopwafel. Only place in the world you can do that. One of the things, you know, when we were thinking about what we can be, I kind of centered on the word better. I'd like people to have a better day after visiting Dutch Village. I'd like to make our community a little better. I'd like to make the lives of our employees a little better. I'd like to just do a little bit better job with the tourists and the visitors. If Dutch Village exists, the world's just a little bit better. We've tried a lot of different things over the years, and you know, to make it 100 years being in business, you really just have to change with the times.
I never thought of 100 years, but all of a sudden, here it is. And it's fortunate that we have a couple of the kids that carried the business on. The concern I have is, where do we go from here, the next generation?
You know, it's a family legacy, and it's your legacy, you know, that we're protecting. After you're gone, it's going to go on and keep going on, and I think we're doing everything we can to make sure that happens. You know, at this point, we don't have a next generation involved, and I don't know if we'll get back to that anytime soon. I think we still got a number of good years left. I'm not too worried about it. Although we're in our 50s and 60s, it's not like I'm counting the days till I'm gonna be swinging a set of golf clubs every day.
yes, it's fun now that our sales are going up, so I don't want to retire either. Not anytime soon.